Good evening, our fellow animal friends. We have come forth this evening to ask some questions. We figured we would have a little questionnaire,
A little Q&A action in this bitch.
have some fun, and just wing it. That's all a man can really do is go with his gut.
That's true, and we have these conversations a lot, and we want to document this. We encourage you guys to do the same and have conversations with anybody that you can find that is interested in, and the magnum opus.
Truth is, we will watch some of the 80s and 90s Terrence McKenna lectures, and we just say, I want to be as much as like him as possible. So yeah, let's try to record ourselves and maybe be as good as he is. No, we really do, though, have these conversations. It's one of the things we really look forward to in our weekly routines. But, like maybe, once a week, maybe not, maybe once a week, a couple weeks, and then once a month, we'd like to document these things. And, it's not even, I hope, 1,000 people click on this video and listen to it. If that's the case, and that's amazing. But it's just more of, we talk about it a lot, whether we are writing, drawing, talking, whatever it is, or in this case, recording ourselves, as much as we can put out as what we feel very meaningful things, then the better.
Right. There's so much, Terrence McKenna said, spread the meme. Meme has a much different meaning today than it did in Terrence McKenna's time.
Oh, yeah.
How he defined a meme. Well, it was actually, he was referencing another person, but they defined a meme as the smallest unit of an idea. That's what a meme is. And so we are in a meme war, and that we are in a market of a bunch of competing memes.
Mm-hmm.
And there's all kinds of different memes, and they're all trying to get their hooks into our brains. So we gotta do our job, and if we get on the internet, then we better make sure that we're getting on the internet directing our minds and our wills to higher consciousness, meaning not to prolong the same misconceptions and misconsiderations.
I have a great many things that I would like to talk about, and I'm sure you the same way. But by the way, it's great to be on the sacred kratom ceremony, and by the way,
kratom is basically our sacrament.
Yes.
Something that we use to touch base with, this current of consciousness that we find very divine, very beneficial, and
yeah,
and puts us in a state where we can entertain some of these religious ideas. And
one of the things that I've really, we all talk about certain things being put on our hearts, but this is really, genuine. It really has, been bothering me a lot lately. And I told him about this earlier, and he has the same feelings about this. And I'd like to throw it out there as much as possible. And since we have the old camera on us, I might as well say it again. You see so much in your day-to-day life of everybody having these conversations that, why are we talking about these things that we do? Why are we focused on these things that we think is the most important thing? But in reality, let's just step back for a minute, and a lot of these things that we're so concerned with really mean absolutely zero, nothing. There's many different roads you can go down. There's nothing wrong with obviously having hobbies.
Right.
But just say, keeping up with the newest fads.
Yeah, it's merely a distraction,
and sports, watching sports, like keeping up with the newest movies, social media. That's one of the things that I just can't help but really dislike so much. But
It's just so fake, you know. I think that's why we really
yeah,
dislike social media. Is you know, at least social media and like we mean like we kind of are talking about a specific type of social media, like because I mean I guess YouTube is social media, but you know YouTube is something that you can go into. You can type something in the search
because we
engine,
know a lot of YouTube people that we've really got a lot of inspiration from.
right?
Psych
So it's
Substance would
a
be one of those
resource.
guys. I
It's a very
mean,
important resource to us.
he's touches on a lot of sacred topics, and it's good to have a gentleman like that around this day and time when there's so much drivel floating
Being
around
slung, yeah.
on the internet. And we really think that a lot of people would point at us and be like, "You guys are lazy. You guys are running from the truth." But that's what we're trying to go toward, the truth. I mean, people's going to point at their jobs and say, "This is the truth.
Mm-hmm.
This is the only thing you should. You need to worry about how much money you make in your life."
You know Tim Dillon, this comedian that I
Mm-hmm.
like a lot. He said, I think it was him. He said boomers. He said you ask them, like, like how could you, like, you know, we're ruining the planet, like, or this is this, you know, we should run our world different, and they just point at their house.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's
Mm-hmm.
like all that matters. It's like, hey, I got
Yep.
a house, a car. You know,
By the way, changing the subject for a second. By the way, what you said is so true. That is what they do. I know, like so many
yep.
people like that, but I don't think I've ever felt so good on a kratom ceremony.
This is I feel fabulous as well, brother. I feel that the veil is even thinner than it was about 10 minutes
Ooh, that's
ago.
so true, man. But another thing is, once you start to veer away from these things that are passed down to us from kids, the things that we should make our priorities, the things that are supposed to be important, the things that people want is, whether it's going to a job or going to college and, making as much money as possible, moving up in the ranks of the position that you are at, when you are merely pushing away so many factors that are eating at all of our feet, just biting away at our ankles. For one thing, what happens after death? There's so many religions, and people can often get overwhelmed on, well, which one of these are true. And I feel like everybody has to think that to an extent, whether they're raised up so many different branches of Christianity, and they all have, look at the Catholics, they have a little bit of a different
A
interpretation,
little bit.
a lot of an interpretation what they feel, heaven and hell even is.
Yeah.
But to make a long story short on this subject, because there's a lot of things we both kind of wanted to talk about. These things are that we mentioned. Technology can be great, obviously, can really serve as a distraction. And what is the great work? We talk about the great
The
work so
magnum
much,
opus.
and it can come from many different forms. We found a lot of inspiration um, from the Eastern mystics.
Yes.
People like Ram Dass, as we listened to some of his lectures.
Mm.
Terence McKenna, people. This is the really big thing though that I've really thought about lately is we talk about our teachers, and most people would be like, spiritual teachers. So, most people would say, my preacher down the road is, well, if he says this, then it must be true. But let's just take a minute to realize there's,
Don't pick an alive teacher. Don't pick an alive teacher. Either
Mhm.
pick a plant or a dead person.
That's precisely what I really.
Because we have a whole history to sift through. You know, we don't need to. You know, we should. You know, if you need a teacher, man, I mean, Plato,
Yep.
somebody. You know that's um, cemented as a great thinker.
And you look at these plants, whether it's kratom, kava, uh, or if you want to go even,
Psilocybin mushrooms.
if you want to go
Cannabis.
deeper, then yeah, the mushrooms,
Dimethyltryptamine.
and there's so many
Absolutely.
teachers, and like kratom, for example, has really done so much for both of us. It we was talking earlier today about it's just hard not to look at the state of the world and just see like so many we feel problems that it just seems like a lot of people, I mean, are not talking about it. Just I can't help but get disturbed when somebody's sweating bullets worried about the stock market.
Right.
Or look, I mean, there's so much under the sun that I really feel is truly important. I would love for more people to come forth with very true, uh, meaningful ideas and just try to step outside of the box that our parents and grandparents and people in the community has passed down to us, and we just
Hmm.
blindly accept that to be the truth. I mean, look.
We need to learn to think for ourselves, and evaluate, our lives and our experiences, and evaluate what's going on in the world, and do so without the filter of culture. Do
Yeah.
so, from your heart and your awareness and your understanding, because so much of us is perceiving things that are happening to us through the filter of whatever belief system that we have adopted.
Yeah.
We gotta suspend belief for a while, and really look at the facts of the matter. I mean, obviously the way that our people's values and the way that the world is being ran, there's some atrocious things that have been going on for a very long time. And you know when you look at religion, I mean, religion, as I feel like most people would see religion as, it's a system, to make it easier to be a better
Yeah.
person.
And it's also easier in the aspect of this is simple enough to latch onto and
Mm,
believe when things could be
much more
much more
complicated. This is
complicated
what I'm
than what
saying,
it.
and I will get to the psychedelic aspect of this in a moment, but um, it's like, how are you going to explain some of these very complex ideas to a simpleton?
Yeah.
you know I mean, it's almost as if, most religions that people, like Christianity, for example, that people, oh, the Bible, it says in the
Yeah.
Bible, and that's it. These types of people are, they're using this as, a concrete belief system. But if an occultist, for example, is different
Yeah.
in this regard, because they will look through many different religions, many different
Yep.
myths,
Yeah.
and see the underlying union. The religions are weird. That's monkeys pointing
Yeah.
at the monolith. That's monkeys pointing at the transcendental dimension at the end of time. you know uh, deep down inside of us, I mean, we know,
Yeah.
for example, that in our brains we have, and in our spinal cords we have dimethyltryptamine. And dimethyltryptamine is it's the most potent psychedelic substance. If anyone has had any experience with tryptamines, such as psilocybin mushrooms, yeah, then you will know that with a sufficient dose, you will have a religious experience. And we know that these plants have been used for a long, long time. I mean, mushrooms have been here way longer than humans
Yeah.
have been here. So it is, and it's a reliable food source. So no doubt our ancestors were experimenting with this
Yeah.
stuff. So when I take mushrooms, it feels like that I am connecting with something so big and so old and so fundamental,
Yeah.
you know, and it seems familiar. I think this is what, paganism, you know, um, has on monotheism is, monotheism relies on words. Pagans say, we can experience God in our own lives.
Yeah.
And I'll 90% of the people that's walking around is disconnected with this literal, complete dimension.
Yeah.
That we can't see unless we have access to these sacraments. And this is one of the biggest problems. I think this is why history has been the way it is because we have lost our connection to spirit.
Yeah.
Through plants. it's been said, you know, the planetary mind, you know, they call it Gaia. Gaia is the goddess of the earth, and the plant life. That's
Mm-hmm.
the goddess. You know, like plants cultivated animals. You see what I'm saying? Plants cultivate us, and you know, we think that we have control over this thing. No, we do not. You know, once this world goes to shit, the plant life will still, you know, be thriving, and
Yeah,
fungus can, you know, like psilocybe, like
gonna grow anywhere.
mushroom spores can exist in space. This stuff, you know, it's as if like the mushroom is a spore that can exist in space. It can literally go from planet to planet. It can travel the gap. It can psilocybin spores can travel the cosmos,
I
finding
was getting ready to say that.
a suitable environment for it to produce,
Yeah.
reproduce, and find an animal in which has the neurology that can take it. And when it's taken, you will be connected to this ancient,
Yeah.
infinite, hyperdimensional realm of information.
Yeah.
And all psychoactive plants kind of do this to an extent.
That's kind of what I want.
Psilocybin is like
Yeah.
that all the way up.
Mm.
You know,
Mhm.
kratom, kava, cannabis. These things do this in a smaller degree.
You know, brother, I just kind of wanted to mention really quickly. You know, even on the smallest scale of the benefits to a lot of these plants, and oh man, I just wish I could put the point across enough. The highest consciousness is love.
Yes.
And I did not really realize what that meant
You've heard
until
me say that a lot. I mean,
I have a lot. And you know what? I haven't just heard you say that. It's not something that I just read that one of the greats has said, but I have experienced it with just kratom alone. At
Yes,
this
sir.
very moment, you know, in the midst of this kratom ceremony, I really feel so much love. And
if you're in this state of consciousness, the idea, you know, people say, you know, you take acid, and the idea of war just seems ridiculous.
that's
When you know, you pick up a dollar bill
That's-
on mushrooms, and you're like, what the fuck is this? This is meaningless. This is a piece of paper.
that's
People
why.
are living their whole lives.
Yes.
People are wasting their prana.
Do you
their
understand? I've
God
learned
energy.
this recently just on kratom
Yeah.
ceremonies.
Exactly.
You never know what these plants are going to show you. Look, there's a variety of things they can show you. It can show you something in your life that these plants have a consciousness.
Yes, sir.
And they do not. They're just like us.
Exactly.
And they are
There's life in a different form.
the most superior ever. Kratom, just say kratom, cannabis, and kava might say, look, you are doing this wrong. It will put something on your heart that you may be doing wrong at the smallest scale.
Anybody.
My first cannabis experience
Yeah.
that I took, high cannabis experience, done that to me. And I, over a course of time, made some changes to what I knew that I needed to change.
Yes.
And, you know, I'm still changing things. We're constantly changing.
Right.
And
Oh gosh, you know what Gandhi said that I
Hmm?
love so much? I'm probably going to slaughter this. I heard Ron Boss tell the story. He said, what if I slaughter this? He said, Gandhi, said, you know, Gandhi's whole thing was he was trying to peacefully, change, like, I guess India's relationship with
Yeah.
Britain. Like Britain wanted to
Mhm.
take him over and stuff, something like that. And Gandhi wanted to fix this without war. And
Yeah.
his whole thing was doing things peacefully. And he had done something and told a bunch of people to go somewhere. Okay. And then once they got there, they realized that they needed to go back or something like that. Okay. And then people were pissed. They were like, Gandhi, you sent us all the way over here, and you know, it was a waste of time for whatever reason. And you know what he said? He said, my commitment is not to consistency. My commitment is to truth. You know, and truth changes from moment to moment.
It does. There's so many times, you know, I may say something to somebody, and then a couple days later, it's like, hey, why didn't you do this?
Right.
That was my mentality there.
You know what Alan
And
Watts
a lot
says?
of people don't realize that.
You know what Alan Watts says? You have no obligation to be the same person that you was
No.
5 minutes ago.
Mhm. And
it's ridiculous because people say, oh, you said you would do this. You said you would do this. We gotta stop cleaning.
Yeah, we do.
To sameness.
Another thing is, we watched a beautiful talk by a gentleman. Thankfully, a lot of these people we talk about has been dead for many, 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 many years. But this gentleman happens to still be with us, and he's a very beautiful guy. But yeah, a gentleman by the name of Duncan Trussell. He's kind of had his hand in a great many of things.
Set his finger in many pies.
He really has, from a comedian to having his own podcast. But the thing that
spending time with Ram Dass.
Oh, that's the number one thing on that gentleman's list for sure. We was watching something, and he really hit the nail right on the head. And I think it's something we should all look at. Whatever people are really interested in collecting, whether it's having the newest of the new, whatever technology that you're gaming or your phone. The reason I bring this up, because it seems like that's kind of a big thing that people talk about. We're just collecting things, the newest clothes, the newest fashion. He talked about how he has a lot of stuff just crammed in his garage, and he's working on getting rid of it. And he brought up something that we just don't think about when we're on a shopping spree. But what are we going to do with all this once we pass over?
And think about this, brother. We're not talking about collecting like useful things. We're talking about do you know what a potlatch is, Cameron? Potlatch. I think that's what it's called. Potlatch.
I don't think so, brother.
Okay. A potlatch is something that old societies used to do when it had too much, when they produced too much. They were a rich society and they produced a lot of stuff and they couldn't use it. You know what they did? They'd take all of this excess that were good stuff, good quality stuff, put it in a pile and burn it because they had too much. That's what our culture is. That is what our society is. Our society is literally a giant potlatch. Yeah. That's literally just wasting so much. It's insane. And the fact that we think that these were useless things. You know what McKenna said to you? He said, "This is ridiculous." He said, "Don't follow this culture and don't be fooled into thinking that the garbage that's being produced out of the bones of this dying society is worth anything. Don't be fooled. Yeah. We're dying. Yeah. This is serious.
Oh, yeah.
We got to stop, with this stuff. We might have to sacrifice some of our pretty things, in order for this planet to stop being toxified.
Yep. Brother.
No real values.
That's the truth, man. Terrence McKenna, that's why we love him so much. A lot of people would look at what I'm getting ready to say as a very cheesy and mushy, thing to say. Sappy. Yeah, sappy. You can't put a price tag on so many things that we take for granted.
Yeah.
And another thing that the sacred plant has really taught us, just say, for example, these talks, look, it's no different. We're having a camera pointed at us. Yeah. We really want to capture the moment. But these talks that we have, you can't put a price tag on it, man. And look, seeking the great work, we both know it's the only thing of why we're here. Yep. In the process, we should do the best to our abilities to not hurt anybody. Right. We don't want to. And
you know what the Buddha said? He said, "Do you want to be hurt?"
Exactly.
Why would you want to hurt anyone?
You know what? I'm just going to go and come out and say something that I absolutely detest. And this whole mindset that people have, so many people I talk to, they start getting really riled up and really loud, and they want to talk about their property. They want to talk about somebody coming on their property, and I'll be blowing their head off, and I'll be doing this, and I'll be doing that.
Hey, there's nothing America loves more than justified violence.
And I'm just going to be honest with you. I wrote about it the other day, and I read him what I wrote. I'm sick of it. I'm literally sick of it. It makes me want to walk in the shadows to do my research. We come forth and do our research together, and just give up on trying to talk about this kind of stuff to other people in public. the stuff we talk about. That's just one example. What does that even mean? Why you want to hurt somebody else? Do you not worry about the consequences that you're going to? You think you can just get by with that?
Right.
Look, all these people, they love to fight. How many guys that just love to say they beat
Yep.
people's asses?
Oh yeah. I work with
Who do you
people like
think you
that.
are? You can't go around just beating people. Look, I don't want to hurt anybody. Look, there's a time that may come up one day where you will have to defend yourself or a family. But to just simply go out and
They're
just
literally
look,
using any excuse they can
uh,
to exercise their neurosis. Think about that.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, our dad, for example.
Yeah.
I mean, I know nobody knows our dad, so it doesn't
Yeah.
really matter if we talk about him. I mean,
Right.
I'm not saying we fucking got abused or anything, but
no,
he's he's so
he loved
ready
to
to get angry. So and he loves an excuse
back
to be a dick.
back in the 80s. He spent what he lived for was getting in fights,
Yeah.
going down to the fire department,
Yeah.
and getting into fights. Me and him, we looked at this growing up, and
What drug goes really well with fighting?
it seems to a lot of people alcohol.
And that's the available substance we have, so that makes a little sense. That
Yeah.
an 18-year-old full of testosterone, give him a little alcohol, you got a great situation going on there.
And by the way, we planned on rambling from one thing to the next after this. There's no format which
No.
anybody has to go by. I just want to
Exactly.
throw that out there. If you want to talk about Coca-Cola 1 minute and
Yeah.
then start talking about Kratom the next second, it does not matter, because there's so much under the sun to talk about, and I'm ready to get to what's really important.
Hi, brother.
But anyway, we talk about the biggest, one of the greatest things that we should seek to accomplish when doing the great work, which we call it, because a lot of the greats has
Magnum
called
opus.
it that. I love that term for it as well.
That's the Latin phrase. Or
Yeah. Well, just talk about, this is something big that I want to talk about. We know people right now that this is something I wanted to talk to you about earlier. They may be on the so-called track, I feel like, to do the great work. But let's look at, we feel, which, I mean, we don't really need to say this. I feel like anybody that's looking at society would already know this, that, the system is obviously against us in a lot of ways. There's a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes that we don't know about. That's a lot
probably stand our hair on end.
Exactly. But I want to say certain people that we know. I think you know who I'm talking about. I feel like this particular person, I was thinking of this the other day, and it's really sad. She's so hung up on what the conspiracy theories are and what the government's doing against us and these secret societies, that's actually stopping her from awakening. Truth
That's
is,
a very good point, brother.
I wanted to talk about this.
Because it seems like it's a woke thing, but it's really...
I actually just want to throw this out here. I don't give a fuck about the so-called Illuminati, whatever that is. I don't care about the celebrities.
No.
Fuck them all.
Yeah.
Look, all of that stuff's going to hold you back from seeking the true wisdom of what we should be seeking.
That is a temporary, fleeting thing. What we're after is eternal.
Yeah. Look, what all these so-called celebrities are doing, and what these secret societies are.
They're screwed up. They're neurotic.
They don't.
The fact that they're at where they're at, makes them neurotic most of the time.
If you want to gain, everything's, how can I do this quickly? That's what our society, because, don't even take our word for it. All you have to do is take a short drive down the road, and most likely you will have some dick riding your bumper behind you, just swerving in his... Well, first of all, what the hell is everybody in a hurry about?
Right.
If you want to really gain knowledge, walk to the nearest green pasture or a wooded area, sit down
and don't say
anything, and just the sounds of nature, especially this time of year. I love summer too so much that you will come back, shut everything off. A lot of times, strangely enough, I don't know how to explain this, it will solve some of the problems that you will have.
Well, let's talk about this, man. I mean, in many, many different cultures, there's talk of, it's given a lot of names, prana and Hinduism, chi. Basically, it's your life energy. You know, we can talk about the mechanistic aspects of our bodies and this beautiful machinery that our body is, but the consciousness, the continuity of consciousness and the persistence of memory are
Mm.
things that just does not make sense. And what exactly is holding reality together?
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
very insane. And
very
an
mysterious.
atom is 90% empty space,
Yep.
so we're dealing with, like, matter is really an illusion. It's literally matter is literally energy slowed down to a
Yeah.
very slow vibration. Everything is energy. We can look at this old bookshelf here,
Yeah.
and it looks like it's solid, it looks like it's a real thing, but
Yeah.
see, we are only here for such a short amount of time that we don't realize that this is liquid, actually,
Yeah.
and it's going to be disintegrating
Yeah.
very quickly. Over in 1,000 years, that will be completely
Yeah.
disintegrated. So
Yeah.
same thing with us. We're actually liquid,
Yeah.
and we're literally so fast coming in and out. We're like a dolphin,
Oh
jumping
yeah.
up.
I
And
remember
yep,
you told me that on my first cannabis experience.
yep,
I've held on to it,
yep.
brother, ever
We
since.
come out of
Yeah.
the of realms unimaginable, and then for a short amount of time, we're here. Oh, we're here. Oh.
Yep.
Back into the infinite
Yep.
nothingness. And in whatever karma you've accumulated and whatever teachings that you need, you will have them.
You know what? This is a big thing, man. Speaking of the karma aspect, you know, the Christians were taught you're going to reap whatever you put down. Um,
In
look,
one lifetime, though, for them,
yeah, yeah.
this is something that's really
This is
an
big. Look,
error in their
we
cosmology.
we really need to take a look of how we conduct our lives, and I'm talking. I'm pointing at me.
Yeah.
I'm really trying to be aware of try not, look, everybody has their good and bad days, and there's certain people sometimes we have to deal with that may not be the easiest ones to talk to. But at this short distance of time that we are here, I really, we really feel like it's best not to get. It's so easy, for people to get so attached to certain
There's so
things,
many
and
trips, Cameron. There's so many
yeah,
trips to get sucked into,
I mean, look,
man.
I am as well because, as I mentioned earlier, our talks that we come forth and have, they are magical. It's a religious experience, and look, I don't, I don't know, what's going to be happening after this. We have our, sensations and our feelings, but on the other side, sometimes I'm kind of like I'm ready for this little thing to be over with.
Right.
They can be very stressful and confusing, and it can be uncomfortable. And I could only imagine the people who's living in horrible pain every
Right.
day, and people who's battling
Mm.
cancer. And look, I understand. I mean, the thing
That's
that
that's all of us.
yeah,
That's all of our future.
I just really
Sickness, death, and old age is literally
look.
all of our future.
Everybody,
And it's okay because
you,
this is not us.
it's not, and you can't have enough compassion
No.
while we are here. That goes back to the highest consciousness being
Dude,
love.
all of the behavioral problems, dude, all of
Yeah.
the terrible things that children have to go through because of, dude, people's parents, a lot of times they do the best they can, dude, but
Yeah.
but they're screwed up from their conditioning and
Oh
they're
yeah,
keep
and they
passing it
pass
down.
it down. It's look, we
We
live in a
must have
world
compassion for all of
that's
these people,
a
Like,
lot of
look,
people
it's
sick.
literally the lack of compassion that's causing children to feel, like they're not loved, and they grow older and they become alcoholics or
Yeah.
hateful people. Like, it's literally compassion can fix everything. I don't care if someone's being a dick to you. You can literally treat them with compassion and maybe show them that they can't make me mad because I know that you're me.
This is the thing. If you're driving on the road, somebody passes you, flips you off, and says you need to drive faster, you stupid idiot.
See, you can
And
get
that
into a trip right there.
that bothers you. If somebody calls you a stupid
Yeah.
idiot, it only bothers you because you down deep maybe think I am a stupid idiot.
Exactly.
There's so many. That's just one small example.
This is an amazing, wise point that I learned from ancient teachings.
Yeah.
And this is that what people say and do is a projection of their internal state. Do not be so arrogant to think that what people say about you is about you. It's not. Everybody is projecting their karma, their twisted
Yeah.
perceptions of the world. They're feeling bad on the inside, so they want other people to feel bad. Is it good? Okay, when you feel bad and you're in a terrible state, this is dark. But a
Yeah, it
lot
is.
of people want other people to be dark too. They want them to be in a bad state of mind because
Yeah.
it makes them feel not alone
Yeah,
to
I
be
know.
in this. And it's we gotta be careful
They
about that.
try to put other people around them that's
Mm.
also having similar suffering than what they do. They hear about somebody. This goes back to the plants we talked about. It can sometimes, point stuff like that out. You shouldn't be mad at this person. Is there something, especially he talked about with a psilocybin
Mm.
experience? But these truths sometimes can be a very hard pill to swallow. But going back to the whole the compassion, thing, I feel like we need that more than ever now. Who is somebody to be driving down a homeless community in their BMW and just looking around at the so-called trash laying out in the ground? And this is the craziest way of thinking, but so many people just look at people like that and it's like, I don't know why the motherfucker don't get up, get him a job. Look at me. This is just another trip. We can count these all
Because
day.
there's so many trips. What I mean by that is like the trip of
You're
saying
getting hung
I
up on a
worked
certain,
hard.
yeah.
I worked hard.
What
That's
is
a
this
trip.
whole I thing?
Yeah, I worked hard. And you're just a lazy piece of shit, drug addict. You deserve to be homeless.
Let's just go ahead and clarify for a minute. We're giving a little bit of a rant, but this term that always got so mad, I just want to punch pillows as hard as I can. But whatever this term, the pothead is.
Mm.
The truth is, a lot of people, that experiment with cannabis, and we'll get into it here in a second. We believe there's actually a right and wrong way to use it. Even though
Yeah.
if you use it the wrong way, we definitely think that's not going to do any type of harm.
It's not going to do any physical harm.
But I'm talking about for mystical and spiritual wisdom and inspiration. And I lost my point. I was going to say something about it, and I can't remember what I was going to say.
All good, brother. I mean,
I'm just ranting on Kratom right
now. McKenna said, what is the danger with these things, with these plants that deliver mystical insight? I mean, the feeling that you get over there, man, is you feel like, oh, you got the answer, but that answer is
Talking about psilocybin?
yes, sir.
Okay, yeah.
You have a core religious revelation. You perceive in that state of consciousness God, spirit, the universe, what makes things run. You understand this stuff. Like this plant intelligence lets you understand some of these deep cosmic truths. And when you come back down, you can't quite crystallize that stuff, but you know in your heart that you solved this thing.
There's things that happen in our heart that we just can't, quite put a finger on. But there's things right now that me and you can't explain, but we just know.
Right.
We know
I think that's a sense.
The unknown hand, the unseen hand is pointing in that direction.
The more you awaken, the more synchronicities that start to happen. And the more the synchronicities start to happen, the more that it's validated to you.
The synchronicities have been insane for me recently.
Me
and
too.
I haven't even told you yet.
I know.
But listen to this, man. Like, this is just all within the past week. The numbers.
Yes.
Looking at the clock at a certain time, but that's not even... somebody would just randomly come to my mind, and then I'll stop at like Speedway for a few seconds, and just I'm like, whoa, I haven't seen this person in 6 years, and that's very crazy. And
it's insane. And the synchronicities happen to me all the time too. And I really do think that it's a symptom.
I'll be having a revelation of some kind. And then the next time I check my phone, you're texting me this revelation. I'm like, there's no point in even being like, dude, I was getting ready to tell you this. We'll just go with it.
Because... Like at this point, we don't even talk about it because it happens so much.
But there was a gentleman who talked about these synchronicities. And talk about raising the hairs up on your arm. They want people to be aware of what these synchronicities, we should think of it as like it's coming from the divine itself. This is a message for you. in this place that we were at right now. When he told me that, what was that guy's name, by the way? Really cool guy. He was he talked about Crawley, and he
This
was
on a video?
yeah, man. He was talking to Duncan Trussell. He was
Oh, Damien Eccles.
all very
Yes, I like
talk
that
about.
guy.
There's another gentleman that's
Modern day Crawley, basically.
oh man, he said some things when I talk that just
He's the real deal. He's a
knocked
magician.
my socks off. You know, he said some beautiful things. You can just tell, you know, the way he's, you know, talking about this stuff. He has a way of explaining it.
Mhm.
Sometimes, you know, when you're reading Crawley, you better be prepared to maybe read that same material over and over again and have somebody to very good person to discuss it with because he even talks about Crawley writing these things into codes, you
Mhm.
know, um, and you might as well do research. And this whole thing is just another form um, to start the journey to become, you know, to awake.
Mhm.
But I want to ask you a question, man. You know, for somebody humbly coming forth and they came up to you and had a little short conversation. They asked you, we was talking about the whole thing to become awake, to awake. What would you say would be a great way to start that out? Whether it be with a plant or certain material to read,
Mm.
what would you think would be a good thing to point somebody in that
Mm.
direction?
I think the first step would be just to start practicing mindfulness. What that means is give yourself more quiet time,
Yeah,
maybe have some sort of meditation practice. Pay attention to the ebbing and flowing of the thoughts in your mind. Jack Hornfield says this, tend to the garden of your mind and see what you're planting, see what's growing, see what kind of things that you're consuming on a daily basis.
mm-hmm.
These are all things that need to be considered, you know. And then, you have to do a bit of feeling, and everybody's path is different, but I would say to, you know, try to walk away from the culture as much as possible, you know. And I'm not saying to not be human. We should live our lives and we should be human and we shouldn't, you know, live a I don't think we should necessarily live the extreme ascetic life in order to be awakened or anything. I think that the problem with, if you're constantly, you know, chasing the next dopamine high,
Yeah,
that you know it's going to be hard for you to get into these quiet states
yeah,
of consciousness. So you want to be human, but you also don't want to let your animal uh craving aspect of
yeah.
yourself to take over.
Mm-hmm.
So we are spirit corrupted by matter. So we're trying to connect with this deep, deep part of ourselves, the deepest part of ourselves, which probably called your higher self and
Yeah,
other names
yeah,
has been called, but try to connect with that. But it's underneath so much of this distortion, which has been, you know, laid over you by the culture, laid over you by your own neurosis and your own misconceptions. So
yeah.
you have to simplify yourself a great deal, you know.
You know, this whole culture thing has really if you look through American culture throughout history, this is the most lame. I just can't help but think this is the most toxic.
Yeah.
You know, like, man, I feel like if we was our age now, maybe 50, 60 years ago, I mean, I feel like we'd be able to relate a little more, even though culture is never good,
Right.
but at least I feel like it'd be more manageable. I mean, it's so hard to even but look, I mean, sometimes it's kind of hard to to be an animal right
Yeah,
here.
it
You know
is.
it is, and
We occupy a very uncomfortable
there's so much
part
that can
of
go wrong as well
right,
in this place. I mean,
right.
whether it's sicknesses and there's people suffering in all kinds of ways without culture having to come in and add that whole new mess of a game on top of you.
Right.
Certain things that we are taught that is acceptable, certain things that are unacceptable. What do you think is because I swear I just don't know why something like kratom would be so to talk about wanting to put restrictions on this or this. Think about alcohol, man. I mean, if you really want to split hairs, I love saying that so much, though. I mean, do you think, I mean, just throwing this out here, that things that, we just talked about opening up the third eyes, they don't want that. I
No.
mean, they want something to make you more interested in this culture that they have prepared for us, carefully crafted. What if it's something much more sinister than what people really think?
I totally think it is.
Because
Dude,
it's the only thing that makes sense.
what other reason could they possibly give for making psychedelics illegal?
Yeah.
They're not dangerous. It's kratom especially. It doesn't even give you visions. It's just feelings.
Talk about a mystical plant. I mean, it really is.
If you're toxifying your body on the daily,
Yeah.
you're damaging every major organ in your body and your brain daily. You're going to be way less likely to connect with this deepest part of yourself. And like psychedelics being illegal is basically the same thing as like buying a house and like there's a room that's just the government won't let you go in.
No. Yes.
It's like, nope, can't go in that room.
That's
That's in your own brain. You have
freaking
DMT.
perfect way to put it.
You have DMT already inside of you. We are all holding a Schedule 1 controlled substance in our bodies. That's insane.
It's very mysterious.
Yeah, and it's like, nope, can't go in that room. It'll shatter
very,
the
very
illusion that
mysterious.
we're casting for you.
Mm-hmm. How long do you think it's been looked at in this way? I mean, like, I know the Victorian ages.
Yeah.
Like people like Crawley absolutely hated the way things was in that time.
Mm.
He even talked about, in some of his books, people like born before not, for just this would not resonate with him.
Right.
But I wonder, I mean, look, if you look back.
He was writing it for the future, basically.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That is.
And the 16 and 1700s, look at whenever the whole, when would that happen? This, like the Salem witch trials.
17.
I mean, look at that crazy stuff that happened. And
the paranoia, the mass hysteria brought on by this
man.
religious view of.
I mean, it's easy for me to point the finger and say, as far as this kind of stuff, this is a bad time to be living in. But I mean, maybe it's always,
dude,
for the longest time.
We're in a very interesting stage. I mean,
yeah.
I was.
There's some good things about it right now, though.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I think that, like Crawley said, we're in the age of Horus, and we're giving birth. The God child is slowly descending into her dimension, and it's either going to be a very rough birth or a very smooth one. I think it's in our hands. I don't think there's a way. We're literally, the veil is thinning whether we like it or not. So we got to prepare ourselves for whatever this reunion is going to be.
It can be very scary. Yeah. Just the way everything seems right now. Everything seems so uncertain.
What's scary, Cameron, to a lot of people and even to me to an extent. Yeah. I've taken very, very high doses of psilocybin, and I've contacted in these experiences things that were so big and so cosmologically, they were such huge cosmological answers that it was so. What I experienced in the psychedelic tryptamine realm was so far away from any school of thought. Everything is inadequate to whatever that is. And that's what's scary is that everybody that's walking around, whatever is going on in their heads is so far away from the truth. But this is the thing too. We can't measure the depths of the universe with the neurology of a primate. Our role was not to, although we're super aware as animals, that doesn't mean that, we know that there is truth. There has to be, whatever the reality of the situation is, that's the truth. Yeah. There is truth, but we're not able to really encompass that with our minds.
That really kills
that's
people.
A liberating thing.
Yeah.
We should live in the mystery, and we should reintegrate ourselves into nature and say, look, I don't fucking know. Yeah. I'm gonna go back to nature, see what they want me to do.
Exactly.
We don't fucking know. We're making a mess out of everything.
That's
what the plants show you. The plants show you to hands off. Open yourself that you can be an aperture for this spirit to come through.
You just take a walk you know, in town, and sometimes you feel so sick.
Yeah.
All the fucking concrete and the fucking cars and trucks just going down the road, and sometimes you think it's so unnatural. This is a weird way to be living.
Right.
It's almost like deja vu of like a better time
Mhm.
when there was no concrete and
I like to
you know.
imagine that whenever I'm in a
Oh, I do
Walmart
too.
parking
Oh
lot or
God, I do
something.
too, man.
Yeah.
Ringo, I do too. And
Like
man,
literally, I really do think, I really believe that like altering the earth might not be a great idea, like in any way, whether it's digging,
yeah,
whether it's cutting a tree down. I
yeah.
really think that if you don't like it where you're at, move. Like that's how it used to be. You would constantly move
Yeah.
and find food. You know, it was
like just like any other animal.
exactly.
You know.
And I think that's more. And you know, when you're living in one space, it's so much easier for delusion to creep up on you.
Yeah.
Because you're not going from culture to culture. You're not
Right,
seeing.
that's
You don't
true.
get to see the relativity of culture.
Oh, can I ask you something, man? And I was wanting to talk to you about this the other day. I had this revelation that nobody ever talks about. Let's just take Christians. Okay, so what happens to adults, like people in old, like dying of, just say somebody living anywhere in Asia, obviously completely different beliefs, and yeah, they've, especially now with the technology we have, they've heard of Jesus, right?
Right.
So they heard about him, but they was raised a certain way, and they they died. They go straight to hell.
Right.
I wonder if that's what they believe. Because if that's so absurd, because what if the procedure was reversed around, and it was those people living in China or Japan, so they didn't believe. I mean, like they believe what their family has passed down to them, just like they have.
Exactly.
So they're damned to go to hell because of that.
Exactly.
You know, even though Buddhism,
Uh-huh.
that's karma, love, being good to people. I mean, what do you think you would ask somebody that? I kind of do feel like I've asked somebody that before.
I always say this to people that are so hardcore, like Christian, for example, because that's one of the popular religions in our area. I say, you're living in a place that Christianity is the number one religion.
Yeah.
I said, if you were born in the Middle East, you would be Muslim.
Yeah.
Because you're Christian now. Just in the same way as you're a Christian right now, you would be a Muslim in a Muslim country, because you have not taken it upon yourself to assess, the truth of the religion.
Very interesting stuff, my good man.
Do you want to continue anymore?
Do you have anything you yourself need to add? I
need to use the bathroom soon, so I'm probably going to do that in a second. But
all right,
you can
man,
wrap it up if you want.
I feel like I've said all I needed to say for the moment.
I think this.
I feel like it was a great talk, getting some couple little problems off our chest,
Right.
and things that we really want to say. I feel like that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, that sounds great to me. I feel like that's all I have to say.
All right, everyone, Hare Krishna, and keep awakening my fucking fellow humans.
Bye.
Bye.